good. Okay, so we're going to continue with this. I'm going to fine tune the back a little bit. So now the back portion of the model is perpendicular or 90 degrees to the base. And I'm happy with that. And all I got to do now is go all the way around and trim it accordingly. Okay? So find a nice comfortable spot. You don't want to over trim it, but just follow the outline of the alginate and leave a little lip there. My fingers are away from the disc, nowhere close. These diamond discs are very effective, so you don't have to use a lot of pressure to trim things. And just a gentle final finish here to create a nice even surface on the outside of the model. So we get something like this on the side. Okay. Now the base I think is a little bit on the high side, so I can turn it over on its side again and trim off the base a little bit more. But just keep in mind that you have to maintain that same angle so you don't change things. A little more pressure with my right hand because of the nature of the disc. I haven't really changed much here. Everything looks the same. And I can go back and touch it up once over very gently and have that finish. Now over the water tap here, you can take your 7R and trim off this little ledge here of excess stone. That simply trims right out. Careful not to, of course, cut your fingers. There's a little depression that I made with my tray and one here, which I will compensate with my block out. I'll show you a little bit later on before we take the impressions. And that's not a big issue. So we created a little bit of somewhat of a land area around the model. But you don't want to have a larger lip coming up and around now, because it will block out the light cure resin material from being cured. And of course, with a bit of a toothbrush or just the tip of your finger, you can rinse that off. And if you follow me over here, take this air gun and blow off the excess moisture. So when you're done, you should have a somewhat symmetrical looking model. So it's not lopsided one way or another. The base of the model is square to the uprights. The residual ridge is parallel to a flat surface or a table surface in terms of left to right and front to back. Now, I think, in all fairness, this could have been a little more like that, but I'm not going to go back and fix it for the simple reason this is a preliminary impression. It's not so crucial now, but it's a good idea to practice those habits now with the study cast. So later on when we get to the master cast, we want this to be absolutely parallel, the ridge being absolutely parallel to the table. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with a lower, a little more real time now. Turn it over, make sure that my ridge, there we go. Now, the portion of the ridge that I want to be parallel with the table is just before the incline, before the retromolar pad. So it's going to be from area around 3.6 to 4.6. Okay, the flat portion of the ridge, which is right here. And I've adjusted it, which I think it is right now. So I'm going to go with that. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to continue. Stop there. Turn it over and give it a once over. So that's good. And then I'll do the outside. Now, don't get too close to the rich roller pad here. You want to give it some kind of substance around the rich roller pad. So we don't have to go all the way to this line here. I'm going to leave it quite thick because I'm going to turn my model over and trim it there. Now, before I go any further, I've done this 1,000 times, so it's very easy for me to know where I am cutting back. But maybe for you guys, I think what we should do is at least outline the rich roller pads right here. And this is where I think, and they're quite evident here on this impression. And we have the buckle shelf here that's going to come up and around here. So this is where I think this extension of the denture is going to end up being. And there we have our labial vestibule with a bit of a labial frenum here, not much to it. There's the little void that I had in my impression. Not a big deal. I'm going to guesstimate and scrape that off. And of course, recapture it with my final impression. So you can outline the outside of the denture or where the custom tray is going to finish, so we don't end up cutting the model too short. So continue here. If that happens with a model trim because I put way too much pressure, there's a little sensor in there that will break the switch. Just back off a little bit. So nice and smooth. So over the rich roller pads now, a little nicer. I'm going to tilt my model on its side and do that. And what I've done is created almost like a sharp edge, which I can go in and taper again. So I have that finished there. If you want to look at it from here. So we have that finish right there. So everything is nice and tapered towards the rich roller pad. Unlike this side, it's still rather bulky. So I need to tilt it over. And again, the model is resting on the table. Cut off a little more of this excess here. And then I have that finish there, which I'm going to round off a little bit more. I think that's pretty close. Now, sometimes with a lot of the residue stones just rinsing off, it gets a little sticky here. So you have a little dispenser here of water. You can rinse things off. It makes the model move a little bit smoother. So that's good there. That's pretty good. If anything, it's not the end of the world if it's a little bit larger. Definitely you want to have all the land areas there, or the landmark, instead of cutting them off. So back over here now, I can turn that off. And again, we can cut the sides of this lip here, create a bit of a land area over the rich roller pad. And here too. Now in here, there's a lot of stone to remove, so I'm not going to bother too much with my knife here, because if you end up putting too much pressure, you might end up cutting your hand. So I'll do as much as I can. But I can certainly go in here with a burr and finish it off and give myself a nice finish and have a lot of access for the light to penetrate through the material to get it to cure properly. A bit of the frenum attachment there. And then we'll finish this off with a burr, a little bit more on the inside, on the lingual. And then we'll be able to block it out and fabricate our custom trays for the final impressions. So just give it a last look. I'm just going to blow off the excess water. So once again, if I've done it right, I should have somewhat of a symmetrical base, somewhat, a little more rounded than a little more straight here. Not the end of the world, but if this was my final master cast, I'd want to have this a little more symmetrical looking, so I can go back and touch it up a little bit more. Not so critical at this point, but it's a good habit to get into from this point. So when I place it on the model, we want the crest of the ridge from 3/6 to 4/6 to be somewhat parallel to the table, and of course left to right as well. And that looks pretty good. So I got the height of the ritual molded pads pretty much on the same level. So that looks pretty good to go to the next step. All right.